I was working with a defense attorney on this case. When I got the discovery, it all looked fairly normal until I spoke with the defendant. In speaking with the defendant, he was adamant that he was innocent. Yeah, what's new? Aren't they all? But when he spoke about how long the officer followed him, it really made me wonder what was going on. It wasn't just DUI the defendant was charged with. He was also charged with evading police, and the defendant had no priors, not even a speeding ticket for the last 20 years. The defendant's story just didn't match the police report in any way. And you know what? That happens a lot, but I kept getting weird vibes on this one. So I headed out to do my scene investigation. First thing I noticed is the ground where the DUI stop was. It was under a bridge. It's just a gravel and a dirt area on the side of the road. This is an actual photo of the area. The first thing that sticks out in my mind is that the area off the road is not very sturdy. It's full of holes, debris, and other obstacles. I identified the location by the police report, but I wanted to make sure I was at the right place. So I scheduled a meeting with the client on scene, and he told me, yep, this is where it was. Now, the night of the stop, the client was pulled over right here and asked to do a roadside sobriety test. He looked at the location. After discussing it with the officer, he refused as he felt he could not successfully do them given the location. He even asked to go to another place about a half a mile away where there was a paved and a well-lit parking lot, but the officer refused. The conversation continued for a bit. Then he just told the officer that he thought he'd better speak with his attorney first. Boom! The officer says, okay, and places him under arrest. This video is sponsored by OREP Insurance and Working PI Magazine. OREP is a leading provider of private investigator liability insurance. Visit orep.org for a quote today. Next, I asked the defendant where he had first observed the police officer. He tells me, and it is about 2 miles from this location. I go there with the client to make sure I understand where exactly, and I compare it to the police report, and it is almost exactly where the officer said he first saw the defendant's car. So I follow the path where the officer followed the defendant, and I notated where the officer had made observations, where the defendant had swerved, turned without signaling, and other things that made him suspicious. Now, the officer notated that in the course of the first half mile, the defendant had made four, in fact, maneuvers that made him suspicious. The officer, however, continued to follow him for another half mile. After they reached a stop sign, the defendant stopped, then continued on. Then the officer hit his lights. Guess what else is there besides the stop sign? A leaving city limits sign. Now they are in unincorporated county, but that is okay. The officer can make a legitimate stop still. He then follows the defendant with his lights flashing along a winding road, following a river off to the right, no shoulders, no street lights, oncoming traffic the whole way, no place to stop for almost a mile until that spot under the bridge. Because the defendant did not stop immediately, the officer deemed it as eluding police. He was also charged with failure to yield to an emergency vehicle, failure to drive in a single lane, failure to use a turn signal, and DUI. So my investigation got very interesting. I ended up doing multiple drive-through videos with my dash cam at varying speeds and at times of the day. I did them in the daylight hours so you could see the obstacles along the roadway clearly. And then I also did them at night so you could see that there really was no place to stop. I also did it at 5 miles per hour under the speed limit, at the speed limit, which varied 25 to 30 miles per hour, and at 5 miles per hour over the speed limit. I then recreated them at the same time at night. Similar weather, partly cloudy, light rain, with another car following me closely with an emergency light on top to show how much those lights distract the driver from finding a safe place to pull over. Oh, wait, I forgot. The officer also never used a siren to indicate to the driver to pull over. He just followed with his emergency lights on. I then got further photos of the scene in similar lighting and weather to show what it was like where the officer asked our client to conduct roadside sobriety tests. Now, this bridge is a bridge for a major freeway. It has constant traffic going on at all times of the day and night, to include trucks and cars. My video also included several clips at different times with audio to show how noisy it is underneath that bridge. Now, as I looked at the entire setup, I got got to wondering, is this just the perfect setup or what? I decided to do an open records request with the police department and get all of the reports for this officer's traffic stops in the last 2 years that were in this area. I was shocked when I got the results. It took about 6 weeks to get the information. They fought me tooth and nail. Now I understand they can't give me information on ongoing investigations. They can't give me somebody's personal data. That's what redaction is for. But I also know that they must give me what they can. I stuck with it, and lo and behold, when I got the reports, I found over a dozen other DUI stops from that very same officer at that same exact location. Same report style, same write-ups, same language. I could not believe it. It appeared he was doing this for some time. Usually he got the defendants to try the roadsides right there. They failed, then he got them to either admit or do a breath or a blood test, and it all went fine for him. Right up until this one. The attorneys blew it wide open. The police department opened up a full investigation, and this officer is no longer with them. Now, I also understand that many of his prior arrests were dropped as well. The DA dropped our client's case. Now, I feel the need to say, I am friends with a lot of current and former law enforcement officers, and I know how hard they work, and I know the risks that they take for us, and I thank them every day for what they have to put up with. This particular officer is not the norm, folks. He is the exception. There are bad people out there in every profession. Bad PIs, bad fry cooks, cashiers, bankers, you name it. On occasion, there's a bad cop. Criminal defense is one of those checks in the balance of our justice system. It isn't always, is the defendant guilty or innocent? Rather, was he or she treated fairly by the justice system?